Well, this is a little different, isn't it? We are going live on YouTube because the stories are moving so quickly. I wasn't planning on getting a show out this afternoon, as I said in this morning's episode, but there's just too much juice going on, and I managed to finagle my schedule to make this a reality because you have Mark Carney saying some, well, more stupid things today and really trying to defend the undefensible of his spending that is happening with the platform they released, and he went on the attack and started attacking the Conservatives for their platform that was released today, which was fascinating. Then Pierre Poilievre calls out the report that we talked about a couple days ago, the one that says 2040 Canada is going to be looking a little rough. People are going to be hunting for food, and the rich will be getting their gated communities and protect themselves against the terrible poor people who can't afford a place to live and can't afford to feed themselves. That is where we're at, and we are going live at this point in time to talk about all these issues because as I said, things are moving so very quickly, and you get the benefit of seeing me do this with the ums, the ahs, the pauses, and as well, I might live say something crazy and stupid. We'll watch it all happen right now, but we will talk about Mark Carney defending his platform against a reporter today. And it was getting a little testy, him and the reporter, and this was Carney's response to that.
CBC. I'd like to follow up on that. Just if you've got an economist like Trevor Tombe saying that your plan is unsustainable, is just that. Is there an argument that if Pierre Poilievre is trying to bring down spending, bring down the deficit, that his plan is more fiscally responsible than yours?
Okay. There's one thing that you can write on a paper. There's another thing that will happen in the economy. Okay. So our plan, to be clear, is focused on investment and growing this economy. All of the spending, all of the investment in years 3 and 4 are for growing the economy. We are creating $500 billion of investment in this economy over the course of the next 4 years. That sounds like an enormous number. It is an enormous number. And the vast, vast majority of that investment comes from companies like Marmon, our big investments in clean and conventional energy, our investments in auto, our investments in housing and beyond from the private sector, but with a clear directional plan. The Conservative plan makes it up. It literally makes it up. It says that growth will come from somewhere, even though there's no plan to address the biggest risk to our economy, the US, even though their tax cut doesn't arrive for 4 years, even though their costing numbers are far too low, even though their reductions in spending don't appear. And on top of that, they divide Canadians into two. If you're at home and you don't have your children in a $10 a day daycare, if you're not taking advantage of dental care, if you want to watch the CBC or Radio-Canada, c'est fini avec les conservateurs. Okay? So, look, it's very different. I would, if you want to compare economists, why don't you look at what Mike Moffat has said today about the costing of the Conservative plan. I mean, this is not we can have the discussion, but this is a real crisis, a real situation. The question is, within a week's time, who's going to be negotiating with President Trump and who's going to be managing the finances of this country? It's going to be François-Philippe Champagne and myself and our team, or is it going to be a group that made it up on a napkin, released it a couple of days before the election, and has never taken responsibility for these types of decisions in the past? That's the question.
Taking responsibility, holy jumping and making my skin crawl up here. Well, this is what your government, you know, the 80% same cabinet, the 80% same MPs, the same team around you. You're the ones who have made the decisions. You've made the decisions for the past 10 years that have led us to this point, that have allowed for someone like Donald Trump to say, get a screw with you for an election because, yeah, you left our bellies up to him. And then your predecessor, Justin Trudeau, went down to Mar-a-Lago, completely misrepresented misrepresented the situation, the relationship of Canada and the US, and now we are currently where we are at, folks. This is how it's going down. It is wild to see him not talk about his platform. No, he went to the attack like, look at this, look at that, bum, 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 bum. Let's compare economists. My buddy economist who likes me a lot, he will say it was a terrible platform that Conservatives put out today. And don't worry, me and Reg will talk about that later tonight on tonight's live stream. But this is where we are currently at. Him just saying the Conservatives just made things up and put it on a napkin because he can say that now. Because he's looking like a fool. They were waiting to put their platform up because the Conservatives weren't putting out theirs. And the Conservatives were waiting out the Liberals because, well, the Liberals have stolen everything during this campaign. So they're just waiting, and that's what happened. They waited. And Mr. Mark Carney put the Liberal platform out. Then we find out that the platform had been constructed and construed long before Mark Carney even showed up. So it's actually just the Liberal Party you're voting for, not Mark Carney. This is what we're getting at this point in time. His defense, even the extension just before this interaction in French, just shows you the arrogance of this man.
So Trevor Tombe is wrong, in your opinion? Yes. I have more experience than he does, and it's important to state that.
Barry with CBC.
Look at the face. I have more experience. Come on, look at me, man. I have more experience. Let's look at Mr. Trevor Tombe's experience here, shall we? Yep. He has been in academia. Yep, he's been an economist. He got his master's at University of Toronto, got his PhD in economics at University of Toronto, and has been working at the University of Calgary, University of Calgary and Laurier throughout his time dealing with economics. Again, you can say what you want to say. You say, I have more experience. No, the only experience you have is mucking it up with the elite. That's your experience at this point in time. You don't have any real world experience. Oh, but I was the governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, and you stunk it up at the Bank of England, and they kicked you out, and so you had to find somewhere else. So you went to the World Economic Forum, you went to the UN, and then you made friends with a 14-year-old girl, hoping that she would get you famous. This is what you did. This is what you did, and this is the trouble I'm getting into going live right now because the boy is a little fired up at the moment. It is really interesting seeing him say, my resume is so much better than Trevor Tombe's. I don't get it. The problem is, Mr. Mark Carney, you can say what you want. You can say the Conservatives made things up. You can say that we have to invest $130 billion to be able to get $500 billion worth of investment coming to this country. No one believes you. That's the problem, is no one trusts you. We saw what you did yesterday. We saw what you did yesterday when you blatantly lied through your teeth on national television in French about Pierre Poilievre and his stance on abortion. Like, how dare you get so egregious?
Vous venez d'accuser M. Poilievre de vouloir utiliser la clause non-obstant pour s'attaquer au droit à l'avortement. Mais M. Poilievre a explicitement dit qu'il ne le ferait pas. Donc, pourquoi cette accusation?
Oui, c'est une accusation, mais ce n'est pas une accusation, c'est un fait. C'est un fait. Il veut ignorer la Constitution de notre pays.
For the translation there, the question came in and says, you've accused Poilievre of wanting to use the notwithstanding clause to go after the right to abortion. And Carney said yes. And the question came, Mr. Poilievre explicitly said he wouldn't do that. So why this accusation today? And this is exact wording. You heard it right there. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. It's a fact. He wants to ignore the Constitution of our country. How in the world can someone say that? He's going to use the notwithstanding clause to go after abortion. You can say what you want and believe what you want about abortion, but let's talk about the facts of the matter. No one has said that. No one has even hinted at doing something like that. But he keeps on jumping on. This is perfect Marxist ideology, and I hate to use a buzzword, but it's the reality. Accuse the other side of what you're currently doing. Who has been using, a huge fan of using with ultimate powers? That's not the wording I wanted to use, but who is a fan of using external powers to be able to do whatever you want? You know, I don't know what happened with the convoy. Did you not write an article in the Globe and Mail saying, yes, we needed to use emergency powers to clean it all up? For what? For some protesters that protested your perspective? How do we know that you're not going to get more of it? You already promised on this campaign trail that you're going to use the emergency powers again. You're going to use them again and tell provinces to get with it or get on. How in the world could you turn around and throw that accusation at Pierre Poilievre? around the term abortion, because guess what? They see what we see, folks. They know they're losing. Even the polls are saying, oh, their head's a little close. I don't give a crap. No one does this type of thing when they know they are losing. Sorry, no one does this type of stuff when they know they're winning. But if they know they're losing, they'll do the dirtiest, scummiest stuff that we've ever seen. And that is exactly what we're witnessing. And we have conservative candidate Dan Maizière found a piece of audio about, the green technology, the environment revolution, and why the reality Mark Carney actually supports these and the investments he's been talking about wanting to make. Here we go.
We're going to manage to net zero by 2050. Actually, we're going to have specific targets by 2025 and 2030, so you can measure the short term. They don't say this quite as loudly, but what they're also saying and thinking, and we're going to make a lot of money off of this, because actually this is the way the world's headed. I mean, I'm not sure exactly when we get there, but to be carbon competitive is going to be value creating.
Boom. There you have it there, folks. You remember we talked about at the beginning on that first talk that you had with the reporter going the back and forth that we are going to make these investments. We're going to make this $130 billion worth of investments, and we're going to get $500 billion back in essentially money coming back into the economy if we do this. No, the investments you're talking about are the investments that Brookfield's invested in. The investments that benefit Mark Carney. That's what you're going to get. And $130 billion is not going to get $500 billion back. I'm sorry to say, it's not going to happen. As much as he tries to sell it, economists all over the place are saying this is ridiculous. You remember when he's talked about, well, if you want to look at an economist, look at Don Moffat. He can tell you about the conservative plan. Don Moffat didn't talk about the liberal plan. He didn't offer that, saying that it was a good plan. No, he's like, no, he'll talk about how bad the conservatives is. That's what you got. That is what you got. This is ridiculous. We know he's saying it in plain sight at this point. We're making investments into his investments. Our investments are his investments at this point. Whatever's good for Brookfield is good for Canada. That is what he is saying. How can you possibly trust it? It is wild, and he's getting more egregious by the day. It is fascinating to watch. And then if we move over to Poilievre at a press conference in Woodbridge, Ontario, and he was asked, how do you feel about the report that came out? You remember this report we talked about? The future lives of what's going to happen in 2040, people foraging for food, rich people going into gated communities to protect themselves against crime, there will be no social mobility. Kids are not going to have the same lives as their parents, and not in a good way. Remember that report? Yeah, that was brought up to Pierre Poilievre by Sun Reporter today, and Pierre Poilievre's response was about as genuine as you could get on this one.
Mr. Poilievre, Joe Warmington from the Toronto Sun and Post Media.
Hey, Joe.
Nice to be here today. And
thank you.
I would be remiss as a reporter to not talk about what you talked about, and I want to talk about the platform, but just before that, you mentioned about this report out of the Privy Council.
Yeah.
Now, as a crime reporter, if you will, when I hear something like that, I cannot believe what I've heard. And it's such a stark contrast to what you talked about in your platform. But I do want to go back, if you can address that, how that's going to help fix it. But that is the most negative thing in my 40 years in journalism that I've ever heard about Canada. I don't see it too many places in the media, and I think it can't be glossed over. So I'd like to talk about that and how you're going to fix that if you win on next week.
I think you're absolutely right. I am shocked that, this is not an interest group or an opinion columnist or even a think tank that has put out this report. It is not even just a government department. It is the Prime Minister's personal department. I think somebody has to ask Mark Carney, has he seen this report? His department wrote it. And what they are anticipating on the current trajectory is a total meltdown, a societal breakdown in Canada if we stay on the current track. Why this isn't blazing the front pages of every news outlet in the country right now is beyond me. Like, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, it blows my mind. What they're actually saying is that, I'm just going to read some of these. More people, this is for the future. It's not enough for Mr. Carney to say, oh, well, the last 10 years is in the past, forget about it. Stop bothering me about the past, he will say. This is the predicted future his department foresees for Canada. More people may struggle to afford rent, bills, or groceries. The resulting stress could worsen mental health challenges. This would increase demand on social services. In 2040, upward social mobility is almost unheard of in Canada. Hardly anyone believes that they can build a better life for themselves or their children through their own efforts. Many worry about sliding down the social order. In 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many. Inequality between those who rent and those who own has become a key driver of social, economic, and political conflict. In 2040, pursuing a post-secondary education is no longer considered a reliable path to social mobility. Fewer young people choose post-secondary education, and those who do see it less as a path to a successful career than a way to reinforce their membership in the, quote, elite. That's not my words. That's the government's words. The report paints a terrifying picture of a spiral of economic depression and cost inflation. People may lose faith in the Canadian project, it says. It forecasts that this may trigger people to, quote, emigrate to jurisdictions where they perceive upward social mobility or other higher standards of living are easier to obtain. If young workers leave, it may become harder to pay for our social programs for the older people in the country. And then this last line, it staggers me. That because groceries are expected to become so expensive, according to Mr. Carney's top government department, people may start to hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways. Like, it is just hard to believe when you read these words that this is about Canada. This is exactly why I'm in politics, to reverse this, to give people back the promise of this country. And we know what to do. We know how to get there. We have to unleash a plan for change, a plan that will cut people's taxes so their hard work pays off.
And he's spot on. I wanted to kind of let that be read out, because I'll be honest with you, it really ticked me off, not even from a personal perspective, just from a genuine, just reality perspective. I did a video covering that specific report like 2 days ago. It was my least performing video. It was terrible. It did terrible numbers wise, because it just didn't get people excited, didn't intrigue them. This stuff is important. If you continue on the current trajectory that we're currently on, that is the future that our current government is saying we're going to be headed to, folks. So what do you vote for? What do you want? Pierre Poilievre, you can tell here, is disgusted by the idea of this potentially happening in our country. And it's just so easy. Vote for change. It's pretty simple here, folks. It is pretty simple. I'll tell you how dire things are right now, folks. I told you, I am one of very, very few of my whole entire extent of my family. I am one of the only conservatives in my extended family. But this election, my whole family are all Liberals, NDP, till the day they die, have been like that forever. This election, they've informed me, they are all voting Conservatives. My friends, politics has changed. The Overton window has changed, and people operating on 10 years worth of knowledge are going to be left behind and be shocked of what is currently happening, because they don't get it. People traditionally really do think that this Liberal Party is Jean Chrétien's party. They legitimately think that. And they think this Conservative Party is that of 25, 30 years ago. No, it's not. Things are changing. The Liberals now go after big business interests, and the Conservatives are now fighting for the little guy. Things have changed. Get educated, figure it out. hear what is going on and what we are currently on the trajectory of, and look at the consequences that could come from this election. Continue to talk to your friends, continue to talk to family, like, share, and subscribe. You guys are awesome. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.